Professor Sabine Dreher, of the Professor of International Studies at York University, Glendon.
First of all, my name is Sabine Dreher. I'm of German origin. I'm in Canada since 2007. I'm an academic, and I was invited here first under the pretext that this is not going to be an academic discussion, just some informal exchange, but now it says academic panel. So what we academics do, what we professors do, we think. And then we develop some ideas, and then we talk to people about our ideas, and usually we find out, this idea needs to be changed, that needs to be adjusted. And so basically I'm actually more interested in what you're going to say, so I'm trying to be brief, because I'm thinking I have some preliminary understanding of what's going on, and if we all share our ideas, we'll have a better understanding at the end. I think that's the whole point. My own background in terms of academic is not Turkish domestic politics. Just to make this very clear, I'm not an expert on Turkish domestic politics. I've lived in northern Cyprus for 5 years, in Gazi, and I've taught at Yakulu University in Lefkoşa. And part of this, that was between 1999 and 2006, and part of this was under Demirtaş. And so I'm quite familiar with any regime change in Turkey, had direct implication on things in Cyprus, and had direct implication for the university, and direct implication for our chair of department and change. So, every regime change in Turkey, you read the newspaper, there were quite a lot of them at the end of the 1990s, you were like, are we still here tomorrow, or do we have to go? So, my own area of specialization is, as I said, not Turkish domestic politics, it's on the global economy, migration. I practice what I preach. I migrated from Germany to Canada. I'm researching globalization, neoliberalism, and currently I've switched my topic slightly to religion and international relations, and I'm researching a religious movement from Turkey, the Fethullah Gülen movement, that you may or probably all know. And I want to understand what is their relationship to neoliberal globalization, because what we're doing when we research religion in international relations, so far we focus only on violence. And what I want to know is how far do religious movements support or prevent the spread of this neoliberal global capitalism that we have, and that I find does not work very well, this global economic system that we have. I have 3 points and 3 ideas, because we were also charged to say, to point out solutions, but I don't call it solutions, I call it ideas. Point number 1, and that has already been said by Feyzi, the Gezi Park movement is absolutely positive for Turkish democracy because it strengthens it. Point number 1. Point number 2, Erdogan is not a fascist dictator, as a lot of the demonstrators are saying. But he and the AKP are responsible for the Turkish Spring that started was in 2002. When the AKP won its first electoral majority. I'm going to explain this point, what I mean. And the point number 3, however, by coming to power and by abolishing the tutelary democracy that Turkey had, Erdogan raised the stakes and the definition of what it means to be a democrat. And in this sense, he falls short of the own standards that he set. And there are, and I'm going to talk about them, there are clear authoritarian tendencies. And so I really understand why people are out in the street. The bad news is that those authoritarian tendencies are not limited to Turkey. You can find them you remember maybe the kettling incidents of the police in Canada during the G20 protests. There are increased authoritarian tendencies in other countries, and I'm going to talk about this briefly. So I don't think I have to explain to you, because Feyzi has done, and the video has done a wonderful job, why actually the Gezi Park movement is positive. Because what we've had since 2002, more or less, the AKP has managed to establish hegemony over the Turkish public, and there was no effective opposition to it. And so what you always have in politics, once you have one powerful movement, you will have a counterbalance. And it was only a question not whether, but just when and how the balancing would come. And so in this sense, the movement is positive for Turkish democracy because it has started to correct this imbalance. The current, as the question has made here, and Fais's answer has made here, the current Turkish political parties seem not to be able to get it what the protest is all about. They're not representative. So we have actually a sort of a crisis of Turkish representative democratic system that needs to be addressed somehow. And yes, that's the good thing. It's being addressed. People talk about it. People talk about their country, their democracy, and I just wish we could import some of them to Canada and start the same discussions here. So, you know, import some. So the second, so I'm not really focusing on this, why this is positive. It's a questioning of neoliberal economic development. It's a questioning of the whole setup. And I have for you, if you're interested, there's a webpage with about 30 of these Çapulcular songs. Some of them are in English. And that's what I'm listening to these days because they're so funny. The videos that, no, there are no videos to this. So if you're interested, I have this webpage that I found and it's really interesting. Second point, is Erdogan a fascist dictator or is he responsible for the Turkish Spring in 2002? Those are the two opinions that we have. So I don't know, and I think I should have asked this question to Faisy, whether the generation that protests now knows really what it means to live under a military dictatorship, and what it means to have lived through a military coup, and what it also means to live in the East, where there has been a civil war and emergency rule, and about 40,000 people or more have been killed. Until 2002, for many international observers, when you look from outside, when I came to Turkey, that was the prevalent impression. Turkey is not a real democracy because the military can intervene in the country and can change the political system. And so the AKP, when the AKP came to power, it abolished it, slowly. It took the AKP until 2007. There was another attempt to change the system with violence, to prevent the election of Abdullah. So it took a while, but the role of the military, I haven't seen any call for military involvement, as far as I've seen, from the things that I've watched, and I haven't seen the military coming out there. Most of them are in prison, for those of you who don't know. About a third of the generals are in prison, so they can't actually come out there quite the time. So the Turkish Spring, in this sense, was in 2002. But we also have to understand, and that's very difficult, actually, is that there is, and I'm coming from a village in Germany, so in a sense, I know what it means when you come from a village to a big city and how the city people make fun of you. Because you don't have the accent, you speak a dialect, you don't know how to behave in a city, you find city people strange. And so what we need to understand is that there is, within Turkey, this divide between what people call the black Turks and the white Turks. The people from the village and the people from the city. The people who are more religious, who have different understanding of things, and the people who are more city-like, and who know how to use modern technology and know how to behave. And so what is very difficult is to see harshly to what extent the criticism of Erdogan is not motivated by this hatred of anything religious. We also need to understand that many people of this who voted for the AKP have grown up with a constant being made fun of because they are religious. And so it's very clear that there's psychological things that are going on. So if you have been bullied and mocked and made fun of, and you have been imprisoned because of your religious ideas, such as Erdogan was, I don't know what kind of effect this has. And he's making references to the coup against Menderes, and he's making references to the other coup. So there are some psychological elements. So when all these people demonstrated, I'm not sure how you feel when, so that his recourse to conspiracy theories means that he's scared. So I'm not saying that, so what I'm saying is we can't, so to call him a fascist dictator is going too far. So what I'm thinking is that, and this is the point number 3 that I'm going to make, he is in an end game, or he's in a very precarious situation because his own support base seems to be eroding. There have been polls that show that his support has been declining by the end of last year. The war in Syria is not shared unanimously, and Israeli foreign policy is not shared unanimously. And so he is now, as Facey said, playing to his core support base. And so we have the paradox that the person who is responsible for one of the biggest progress in Turkish democratization is now the biggest threat to further democratization. Because of that precariousness, because as all politicians, the goal is to either show your power, maintain your power, or increase your power. And so this is about staying in power. So having said all of this, and just having sold to you Erdogan as Turkish Spring, there are clear tendencies towards authoritarianism under Erdogan. What we need to understand is whether this is comparable to other authoritarian tendencies in Canada, United States. We've just learned that actually we have a form of United States Stasi government that spies on everybody. So if you think you are a secret, everything is known about you. The United States is watching you, is controlling. It's like the German Stasi system under East German dictatorship. And so we have an element of authoritarian. All democracies are now under threat. So what we have is that Erdogan faces a situation that his victory has meant that people want more from democracy. In a sense, his understanding of democracy is you go vote, and then you go home, and then you're quiet. And then you come back out, you vote, and then you go home again. This is the German Interior Minister. I remember that when I was a child. There were the demonstration against the renewal of the Cold War and some changes in weapons technology, and that's what he said. A real good citizen stays at home and doesn't go to demonstrations. It's not a good citizen. You go to, if you want to change something, you go and vote. And the problem is that he has raised the stakes, that it would be a different thing after he comes to power. It would be more democratic. And so that's what people want. They want more democracy. They don't want less. They don't want the old-style democracy. They want to have more input. You cannot just name a bridge after a sultan that is perceived by a large minority as divisive, and other such questions. And I'm sure you're going to tell me another million examples of this wish for more inclusiveness in how governments rule. And in political science, we call this the switch from an authority. Government to governance is the official terminology. You're not governing, you're not imposing your will, you're doing this by negotiation. The network state is another example. So what I'm not going to do is now go through all my list of authoritarian tendencies. I just want to say 2, 3. The Ergenekon investigation seems to be developing into a witch hunt. The number of terrorists, so-called terrorists in Turkey is extremely high. Worldwide, apparently, in the last 10 years, 30,000 terrorists were arrested, a third of them in Turkey. So it seems that the AKP is very liberal in calling people terrorists, and you all know that if you now go on Taksim, and you are also now called a terrorist. Now, the reason why I think Erdogan's rule is a bit precarious is because I am not sure whether in the last 10 years everybody has profited from neoliberalism, from these economic policies. And I'm not sure whether the poor people who voted for him will still do so. And that's why he's now reverting to this very extremist language, because he has to keep them on his side. And so he's changing the topic, and from the Reyhanli bombing attacks to abortion and all kinds of other maneuvers to switch the topic. But also, I'm thinking that there is now, the poor people who voted for him see the rich Muslims, the rich Muslim bourgeoisie, and they themselves are still in poverty. Or the wages, I mean, there has been a huge amount of inflation. When I was in Istanbul in August, I was shocked how expensive things are. And I don't know whether wages have kept up, because I know that the AKP, like the governments before, have been very repressive to labor. So I'm thinking that this is about Erdogan, as Facey also has said. It's about Erdogan staying in power, and with him the elite to profit from this rule, and he has to revert to these extreme languages and measures. And it's kind of sad to say, but this is happening elsewhere. I just want to conclude with not with my 3 ideas, but 1 point. If we are going to classify this as a clash between religion and secularism, we're making a mistake. Because if you think that this is a religious person in power that is suppressing the secular people, then you are immediately putting all religious people in Turkey on the defensive. And as far as I understand it, within the religious segment of the population, there are a lot of people who are extremely critical of Erdogan also. They call him a religious Kemalist. That's the expression that I've heard. And I was very shocked and surprised, a religious Kemalist by his own people in quotation mark. So if we call this, if we use religion secularism, I think we're increasing or making things worse. And so we have to call this democracy versus authoritarianism and play with this as opposed to religion versus secular. And just one final note, maybe, it would have been better not to leave the dealings with the military dictatorship to the courts. In Germany and in South Africa, transition to democracy was accompanied by roundtables and by a truth commission. And I think that's something that one might have or can still consider, I don't know. But telling the tales of what it means to live under authoritarian rules from all sides might be